I heard a cry. That was me. Oh, okay, do you want me to go? Yeah, that's probably best. Okay. You remember last time where I tricked you into thinking that I did not like the androids of Tara, only to then say that actually I was tricking you. I did love the androids of Tara. God, I wish I was doing that again. But no, I've got to be serious this time. We are looking at the worst Doctor Who Season 16 story, The Power of Kroll. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my rant on Doctor Who Season 16, Story 5, The Power of Kroll. I almost said the Androids of Tara for some reason. The Power of Kroll, the fifth and penultimate story of the Key to Time saga, or season. So, The Power of Kroll. Before we start, I just want to do a quick rundown of Robert Holmes' stories up to this point. I will not be talking about his ones from the 80s, as we're not there yet. But I'll do his 60s and 70s ones quickly. Okay, the Crotons I actually liked. I thought that was a pretty good story. I mean, I did change my mind a little bit on it later on, but I still thought it was good. I know lots of people aren't fans of it. The Space Pirates is my current least favourite story of all time, and I think that's going to be staying that way. And I'm sure lots of other people hate it, even if it's not their least favourite. I know Jack McCulloch doesn't like it at all, but doesn't consider it the worst. Then we got Spearhead from Space, which was a fantastic start for the Third Doctor's era, and Robert Holmes pretty much redeemed himself after his previous story, and in some people's cases, the story before that. Terror of the Autons was a brilliant follow-up. Skipped season 9. Carnival of Monsters was a great fun adventure. Time Warrior was also a very good sci-fi pseudo-historical. The Ark in Space is one of my favourite stories of all time. He rewrote Pyramids of Mars and The Brain of Morbius, and those were both brilliant. But he didn't credit himself as the writer on that, as some other writers had put their ideas down, so they went under pseudonyms. The Deadly Assassin was outstanding, and I can see why Jack McCulloch would consider it his favourite story of all time. The Time to Wan Chang was brilliant, with some slight stereotypical issues, but just ignoring that, it's still a great story. And The Sunmakers, whilst I think the story wasn't that great, it was a ton of fun and very enjoyable, and considering the subject matter, it was actually handled well. I'm not going to say terribly well, but I would say it was well. I might have been a bit harsh on it in the review, but trust me, there are people who are much harsher on that story, just as there are people who are much nicer on it. And finally, also the Ribus Operation, which was a great way to start this season. And this season so far has been amazing. Each story has been brilliant and enjoyable, coming to its peak last time with the Androids of Tara. And also that's following on a pretty good wrap up to the previous season as well, after a needed good final story of that season. And from Underworld onward up to Androids of Tara, each story had been getting better. Because if you saw my Underworld rant, I did not like that one. But then each story kept getting better and better and better and better, and then better until it reached its peak with the Androids of Tara. And now we have completely dropped the ball. All the way we've gotten so high since Underworld, and now we've come straight back down to Underworld level. Something went wrong here. I do not know, but I think this script should not even have gone into production, let alone even made. For starters, it's boring. It's boring. Just like Underworld, it's boring. There are some good bits, sometimes some fun moments, especially from the Fourth Doctor, throughout the story, but for the most part, it's boring. Boring, dull, uninteresting. You know, it has a political feel for me. I think this one does have quite a few political themes, even if on the surface it doesn't look like it. I mean, say what you want about politics in the new series, but at least in some stories, or most stories, they at least try, even if it's in-your-face politics, they at least have great stories that they have them in, and they try and put other messages in, like Rosa. It's a fantastic educational story about discrimination. Emperors of Mars, it's a great story about different values between two different groups of people in one place. Zygon Invasion, a great warning about terrorism. The great depiction of that. Even Sunmakers, which we had last time, whilst I wasn't so fond of the idea of taxes, it was still handled well. Surprisingly, it was still handled pretty well. Like the Time Lord, stuffy bureaucratic politicians in the Deadly Assassin, they were handled well, and Sunmakers was fun. That was a fun political story. But Power of Kroll, it's nothing like any of those examples, nor Deadly Assassin, which was also a very good political story. It's nothing like any of those examples. It is boring, the politics don't work, and it's just not that, it's tedious. The best bit about the politics in this story is that there's some world building. There is world building and religious stuff about concerning Kroll and his manifestations. Some of my books seem to be dislodged. I'll sort that out later. But the thing is, despite that brilliant world building, some nice history, some nice detail, mostly spoken about in episode 2, besides that, it's absolutely boring. And it's not interesting. Most of the characters just standing around talking, or just being idiots. You've also got this leader guy of the gas rig. He wants to get rid of the Swampies just because they're Swampies. I mean, he's a bit racist. He doesn't really hate them. He just wants them out of the way. And he hires this gunrunner to pretend to give weapons to them, to pretend that they're from this group called the Sons of Earth, which is basically the classic series equivalent of Friends of the Huge. And he's got this guy to give them the weapons and pretend that he's from this Sons of Earth organization, so that he has an excuse to exterminate or at least attack the Swampies. When are the Daleks coming back? Oh, right, 2 more stories time. Okay, not too bad. But then again, that's Destiny of the Daleks. So we got that, and I don't care. Oh, and the Swampies. I think Robert Holmes, dare I say it, took the mick out of religious angles with these guys, and he's just made them a religious stereotype and just overdone it a little bit. And I don't know, it just doesn't work. And these guys, they don't really do anything. They try to sacrifice the Doctor and Romana, but that's as far as it goes. They're not that interesting, and their leader is annoying. In fact, when they're even confronted with Kroll about to kill him, he's just on his knees praying. Yes, I know religious leaders may do that, but that won't help. Even if you think even if you still think he's your god, it's not helping. Ugh, I'm glad he dies. I'm glad he fucking dies. And the same for the leader of that control base, even though he killed John Leeson's character. Bastard. Yeah, because John Leeson, K9 couldn't be used in this episode due to the location filming, so instead they got John Leeson to play another character. And they killed that character, and he was a likeable character. Bastards. However, Philip Maddock returns for one more role, and it's easily his weakest role. This is easily Philip Maddock's weakest performance. And yeah, I mean, he's still good. He's still Philip Maddock, but it's easily his weakest performance. And it's a shame that he went out on this story as opposed to Brain of Morbius, for example. If only he'd come back one more time in a much better story and a much better role and a much better character. Maybe another villain. This time he's not a villain. He's probably at his least antagonist, because in the film Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, he was sort of like another villain who sold the Doctor Who and his friends out to the Daleks, only to be exterminated. In the Crotons, he was sort of a lesser antagonist, but not that much of a villain. War Games, he was the main villain, and Brain and Morbius, he was the second main villain, and damn brilliant in both. But this time round, he's not an antagonist. He's pretty good. He's an all right guy. I mean, he distrusts the Doctor, but that's as far as it goes. And yet he doesn't put as much effort into this role as any of the other 4 roles he's done, including the film, which I thought was his 3rd best performance. I would then say the Crotons would be the 4th best. If I was to rank his performances, it would be least favourite to favourite would be Power of Kroll, Crotons, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, Brain and Morbius, the War Games. Or those 2 could swap. But yeah, I don't know. He just didn't quite get into it this time around. Maybe it was his character. Maybe he wasn't playing a villain or an antagonistic character. He just didn't put all his effort into it. And at the end, he and the Swampies seem to be extremely cross that they have to be together, because his character is the only human left alive, and the Doctor says someone will come along and pick you up. And once the Doctor and Marla have left, the Swampies sort of surround him, and they're all showing grumpy, cross faces. Like none of them are happy with the situation. Joy. And also, the filming on location in this swampy place, it's very difficult to film here, so it would have plagued the production team. So it makes me wonder why they bothered making such a difficult story to film. I mean, the location work, it looks beautiful, it looks stunning, but it makes me wonder, because of it would be difficult, and I'm sure some location recce's would have gone and had a look around, why they bothered with the story. In fact, maybe they should have scrapped it and chosen something a little easier to film, like Androids of Tara or Stones of Blood. Those were easy stories to film. They just had to go to a castle and its grounds, or some stone circles. But they've got to go to a marsh in this story. I'll give them credit for being brave and actually managing to finish the story because of that. The Swampies are a pretty rubbish design. Do we have a picture? We've got the leader on the back. Yeah, it's a rubbish design. It's a guy in painted green with some long curled hair, and it doesn't look that intimidating. Nor do they feel sympathetic. Neither evil or sympathetic, threatening or sympathetic. They're just air. And the guys on the rigs, I mean, like I said, Philip Maddock does good performance, even if it's his weakest. And John Leeson, he does a good job as well. And you've got the leader who's is a big prick, and he goes a bit mad later on because too much money was put into the rig, so he doesn't want the operation to end. Makes me wonder what the point of having that gunrunner guy arm the Swampies so they can fight them off. What's the point? Just leave them alone, and they'll leave you alone. Just stop it. We don't need that. And the whole sacrifice thing is boring, and all the Swampies just dancing around the thing shouting Kroll every single couple of seconds. That's not how you do a religious thing. That's just silly. This story is just so tedious to watch. At least that pathetic Kroll costume actually has a point of being pathetic in parts 1 and 2 when we see it, and it's a guy wearing a pathetic costume, so at least it makes sense to look pathetic because it's a homemade thing. And then you've got the Kroll itself, which actually that's a pretty good model, I'll say that. And the background production isn't terribly bad. I mean, for the time, it's not too bad. But it's just not interesting. I don't care. And this Gunrunner character, he seems to be fun to start with, but then he doesn't really do anything afterwards. And he does reveal the plot, and then he gets killed. right after escaping another death trap. I mean, seriously? If you're going to kill him, then you have killed him off sooner. Or at least got him to contribute something before he got killed off. I mean, yeah, he explained his point, but that was when they were all on the stretch thingy to be sacrificed. When he died, it was a few minutes later after escaping, and he would have been captured by Kroll and probably eaten or drowned, just like some of the Swampies and some of the guys at the gas station. It's just the way Kroll is defeated is good, with the Doctor realizing that the source of Kroll's power that was turning him big was the fifth segment of the Key to Time, so he was able to transform Kroll into the segment, and then was able to sort things out a little bit with Swampies and Philip Maddox's character, although not much. As I mentioned, they're a bit cross. And it explains that there was some big squids around time, although Kroll looks very different to the little big squid that they find on their way back to the TARDIS. This is... So, on the whole, this hasn't actually been that much of a rant, actually, considering I've ranted a bit earlier and said this was a rant, but it hasn't actually been that much of a rant, has it? Oh, okay, well, don't worry then. It's just a negative review then. But on the whole, I think this is a bad story, bad execution. The location work is brilliant, but that's as far as I'll go with that. Tom Baker is amazing, as always, and he gets the best comedy in the episode. And Mary Tam is also really good. Again, she gets fucking kidnapped. This is what? The fifth story. The fifth story this has happened. I mean, she got kidnapped in the... What? Actually, no, she didn't get kidnapped in the Ribus operation, but she did get into trouble that she needed rescuing from in the first cliffhanger. Pirate Planet, she got kidnapped. Stones of Blood, she got kidnapped. Android of Tara, she got kidnapped. Well, she was tricked. She was invited back to the castle and then held hostage. And then, after escaping, she was re-kidnapped. So I guess she was kidnapped twice. But the first time she was tricked into having an invitation to visit. An assistance, I should say. But certainly later on, after escaping, she was re-kidnapped. So... And she gets kidnapped again and needs to be rescued twice again. Just one time with the Doctor, but the other and the gun runner. But I don't know. Romana is supposed to be a smart character, but answer me this: why does she keep getting kidnapped or put into these situations? I know companions in the classic series sometimes would get kidnapped or put into these on the brink of death situations, but this is the fifth time that one or the other has happened to this one companion, and she's supposed to be one of the smartest of them. Oh my god! I know it's not going to change much with Lana Ward, as I mentioned last time, and I think next time Romana is going to be captured as well. 6 stories of Romana getting into danger. Can we have her not get into danger for one story with Lana Ward? I know she gets captured or into danger in some stories, but for some of the others, can we just leave it? Just for an episode? As a story? So, Power of Kroll with great location work, great performances from Tom Baker and Mary Tam. The other actors range from good to okay. But the characters aren't that great. They're not very interesting. They're not engaging. You don't feel threatened. I'm more annoyed in some cases, mainly due to their leaders. And it's just a boring, tiresome watch. I was originally going to give this story a 4 out of 10 just before it got to the end. However, after the end, I was just like, no, this just doesn't work. This is not good. This is a boring, bland, unenjoyable story. There's some good stuff like the world building, as I mentioned earlier, and some performances from our main lead's performances, and whilst the location work was probably difficult to film, it still looks really nice. But the story itself is absolutely boring and dull, and the politics in this story are just there for the sake of it. as opposed to those examples I provided earlier, which actually had other stuff to alongside the politics to make it good. Like Sunmakers, it was enjoyable, for example. It was about taxes, but it was fun to watch the tax story. Even if the story wasn't that great, it was still fun to watch. Other stories can have an emotional and or educational message behind it, or a look at such a thing. And other times it can just work into a really good story. None of that applies to this. This story just sucks. So I'm going to give the Power of Kroll a 3 out of 10. Like I said, there are some positives. There are a few redeeming qualities, like the world building. There's some really good world building, mostly in part 2. And Tom Baker and Mary Tam, they're great. The location filming, great. And even like how Kroll is the 5th segment of the Key to Time. In fact, Kroll itself is actually not that bad of a model. It's actually pretty good. Even the projection background of it isn't actually that bad, come to think of it. It's actually decent for the time. But that doesn't make up for the boring slog that is the rest of this story and the really investable side characters that you get. It may have worth been due to such a story and for the troublesome location filming. It may have been worth scrapping this story and just having something else as the Key to Time's 5th story, because this one just doesn't work. And I think this is probably why Robert Holmes wouldn't write a Doctor Who story until 1983, where he would be invited to write the 20th anniversary special. And suffice to say that some of his ideas didn't quite work. Robert Holmes' 20th anniversary story was the 6 Doctors, although instead of having 6 Doctors, you just have an android First Doctor, and past clips of archive footage of William Hartnell would have made the 6th Doctor, as opposed to having Colin Baker in it, for example. So instead of that, the producers would have gone for Terence Dix's The 5 Doctors, which included the real First Doctor, but with both Hartnell and actor Richard Herndale playing the character, and therefore not have the 6th Doctor. Therefore, it's just the first 5 Doctors, even going as far as having archive footage of Tom Baker. More on that when we get to Sharda. So yeah, Robert Holmes' 6th Doctor story wasn't used, but considering some of his ideas in that, and considering what Terence Dix's 5 Doctors is like, I love you, 5 Doctors, it's probably for the best. Besides, Robert Holmes would return to the show with full force the following year with 1984's The Caves of Androzani, which, according to the booklet in this DVD, says it reuses some of these elements from that story, and that story is a new, fresh take on a political and war message story. It's again, it's another political story. It's an anti-war story, but it's done with a fresh new angle. So after a good couple of years, Robert Holmes would return to such a story, but with a new, fresh angle, and it works amazingly. And then he'd go on to write The Amazing 2 Doctors, which takes some elements from his 6th Doctor scripts. They're not wasted. And then he writes Trial of a Time Lord Parts 1 to 4, The Mysterious Planet, and Part 13, The Ultimate Foe Part 1. And also the outline of Part 2 of that story, which would have been Trial Part 14. And whilst those weren't his best scripts, decent start to that, okay start, I would say. Okay start and great finish to that season. Not the biggest fan of Trial of the Time Lord. Not the biggest hater either. But certainly after a couple of years away from the show, Robert Holmes would return in full force for his next 2 scripts, The Caves of Androzani and The 2 Doctors. But he'd be taking quite a bit of a break. It's just a shame that this story is his final one of the 70s, and it's the one that caused him to go into a bit of have a break from the show for quite a while. And he'd been doing so well before this point as well, between Space Pirates and here. Sunmakers was probably the weakest, but like I said, I had some fun with that. story-wise, and I'm discounting his script editing duties, just going full-out stories, including the 2 he had to completely rewrite with pseudonyms. But until here, he was doing so well and so good, even good enough to become the script editor for a while. But if he's going to try and go back to his Space Pirates level of storytelling, then it's just as well he's going on a break. And I would say the same for other writers who are doing that. Look at Chris Boucher or Louis Marks or Bob Baker and Dave Martin. I slanted those writers for some of the stories towards the end of their tenures. And new series writers, the fans were slated Stephen Moffat in his later years, and easily to say why in the cases of some stories. So yeah, it's not uncommon. It's just something you've got to be aware of. And to me, this is Robert Holmes' second worst story after the Space Pirates. Hands down. God. And it's a really, really big bump in the road to an otherwise amazing season so far. Because up to the previous story, this season has been so good. And now we've got this. But there's a silver lining to this situation. It means that the next story has to go above and beyond to end this season with a bang. So how does the season finale hold up? We'll find out next time when we take a look at, I've got the right one, the Armageddon Factor. Also, fun fact about this story, this is the last 6-part story because Sharda wasn't finished. And the way Sharda's been finished now, whilst the linking material version is 6 parts, it's not a full-length 6-part story. And the animated edition is more of a 2.25 hour long movie, in a way, to a similar length to The Two Doctors or The End of Time. So, yeah, so considering this is technically the last proper 6-part story we'll have in the 6-part story format, due to Sharda not being completed in the original planned format like every other story, and then being completed in other different ways. And then after that, the longest story you'll have, episode-wise, would be 4 parts, most, or 43-part, 45-minute length story, or The End of Time, with the 2 at the hour and the 1.25 length episodes. There, the longest episode is The Five Doctors at 90 minutes, individual episode, followed by the movie at 85, 86. And then after that, it's the 75-minute episodes of the new series. So, anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Next time, the Armageddon Factor, technically the last 6-part story of the series, but officially sort of Sharda, but only if you're looking at the linking material version or the webcast. But that's officially the last one, but technically it's this one. Or is it the other way around? That's technically, and this is officially. I'll say this is technically. Technically, this is the last 6-part story of the show. And I'll see you guys for then. And then after that, the season 16 ranking. And then we'll finally get another Dalek story. And then after that, we'll be on to the Fantastic City of Death. Oh, sweet Jesus, thank God. Anything to get away from this stinker. Anyway, that's it from me. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. But trust me, I'm the least nasty. But trust me, I'm the least harshest person on that story. That doesn't consider it a good, which is probably a classic series, which is basically like Friends of the Ood, except concerned about helping people, which is basically the and yeah, so we've got that, and I don't think that's not a very good idea. But it's easiest, and yet it doesn't put as much effort into it as his other roles. None of the other 4 roles he's done. And that's why they decided to not bother with that and get Terrance Dicks to write a story instead of the 6 Doctors, which was Robert Holmes' story was the 6. The story Robert Holmes was writing was would be called the 6. The story Robert Holmes was planning or would have written. But Robert Holmes would return to the show. Robert Holmes' 6 Doctor script would not be used, but I'm glad to say he would return to the show. But considering, and he had been going. So, how does the Armageddon factor hold? I'll see you guys next time. Also, the good news about this story, in the case of the 2 Doctors, or really long new series specials. The End of Time. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Anything to get away from this. I heard a cry. That was bad.